This is 20 Minutes of Impact from the United States Energy Association Power Sector Podcast. I'm Herman K. Trabish. I've covered the power sector since 2006, and I currently report for Utility Dive. On this episode of the podcast, my guest is Shelley Copsey, co-founder, CEO, and director of the UK's FYLD, which provides technologies that support data-driven utility decisions in real time to get better safety, productivity, and quality assurance controls and remote site management. Shelley's going to describe how AI-based platforms like FYLD can make power systems more efficient and cost-effective. Shelley began in 2000 with global financial advisor KPMG and has held leadership positions with CSIRO, Australia's national science agency, and with leading private sector business successes, including GeoSlam and the digital and innovation divisions of multinational business services provider PricewaterhouseCoopers. So, Shelley, we'll get into technologies in a bit, but first, talk about where FYLD is based, what it does, and the scope of its growth since you co-founded it in June 2020.
Thanks, Herman. Great to be here today on your podcast. FYLD is a UK-based company. We're headquartered out of London, but despite still being quite young, we've got deployments the length and breadth of the UK, across in the US, particularly, in Texas, where there's a lot of infrastructure build going on, and right down into Latin America, where we've got companies that build and maintain highways, that bring water to the people of Chile. So we're quite widely based for such a young company. What we do, FYLD at its core, is a frontline intelligence platform. Our customers every day send thousands of people out into the field. If you look at the normal ways of working for these infrastructure companies with huge field workforces, once they send them to the field, nobody really knows what's going on all of those jobs. There's a lot of phone calls, there's a lot of WhatsApp messages, but across those operations, how is risk emerging? How can we stop it in its tracks? And how can we drive highly efficient, high quality, and very safe field operations? That is what our frontline intelligence platform does. Growth has been tremendous at FYLD since we founded it. First couple of years were pretty tough, the height of COVID, but we've made that platform super solid during that period. And, we've pretty much experienced, doubling of the size of the company in terms of revenue year in, year out since, 2022, 2023.
Wow. I very much relate to what you're saying about the people out there in the field being alone. I mentioned to you earlier that I just got back from this major renewable energy conference called RE Plus, and I had a chat with a guy who does wire work. He told me, and he was describing all the difficulties that he has being sort of out there, knowing what solutions are, having no way to really communicate it up the chain. But we'll get to the unique technologies and services FYLD has demonstrated. But before we go there, describe a little bit for me, more generally, the challenges that utilities face today. They've got to meet new load growth, they've got to manage transportation and building electrification, and they've got to resist the rapidly rising costs that come with modernizing power system infrastructure. So what has FYLD done to discover these challenges? And then we'll talk a little bit about what they actually do to resolve them.
So the challenges that this industry is facing are immense, right? Like, there's the mass urbanization that's going on across the world. And can governments really afford the cost of building the new infrastructure that we need in the energy sector to support that urbanization? Put on top of that, the load of things like data centers and the increasing demand for energy just, in communities as they exist. Like, costs are becoming absolutely unaffordable with existing cost structures. If you then just go to like existing energy infrastructure, whether you believe it's climate change, whether we're just seeing more wildfires, it doesn't really matter. we're having such an impact of all of these climate events on the grid, and we're seeing challenges like, can we bury infrastructure at pace? When we have a huge storm, how do we get our infrastructure up and running? And again, the cost of the way that these things are done at the moment are completely unaffordable. So you've got this system that's kind of heaving at the seams. It's not affordable to keep going as we are, and the demand for that service is getting more and more. So to our mind, it's really caused a moment in time where we're seeing utility owners, the investors in those utilities, governments, and indeed the population who pays for a lot of these services stop and say, like, it's a moment in time where we need to have change, and where technology should be letting us think differently about how we tackle those challenges. And FYLD really over the last 5 years has come into being to help companies have that moment in time where they can think very differently about achieving better outcomes for the populations they serve at a lower cost, and really importantly to us, with every field worker knowing that when they leave the house in the morning, they're going to return home safely.
That's it for part one. If you want to hear the rest of this terrific conversation, subscribe to the Power Sector Podcast's Power More. And with your subscription, you'll get both parts delivered directly to you the second they drop.